Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It is a glorious Sunday today. It actually is Mother's Day, so if you are a mother and a good mother at that, I would wish you happy Mother's Day, and hopefully you feel appreciated today. So about like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I had like a lot of free time on my hands for the weekend. It was about a week ago, I would say. And, I'm doing the regular thing that a cinephile moviegoer does. We hit up the AMC app. If you're a AMC A-list member like I am, AMC app is where you go to first to see like what movies you're going to be scoping out to go see in the theater for the weekend. And so I went to the AMC app and I looked on like the Watch Now tab and like the Coming Soon tab. And I was like, what can I find that I already haven't, reserved a ticket for or just didn't know was showing this weekend? And I didn't see anything. I had no luck. So then my second pathway is like after the AMC app fails me, I go to Google. So I went to Google, but I had nothing in mind. So I just typed in like May 2026 releases. And I saw that Gregg Araki's new film, I Want Your Sex, was releasing in film festivals last weekend. So I typed that into Google and hit the Showtimes tab in Google for the film and saw all the theaters that it was showing at that weekend, and I snagged a ticket. So today I thought maybe I should just come and talk to y'all about my thoughts in regards to the film since it hasn't come out yet, but also in regards to just Gregg Araki's filmography in general, because I did do a deep dive into that after I watched the film. So let's go ahead and get into it. I Want Your Sex is directed by Gregg Araki. It is also written by Gregg Araki and Carly Ciartino. It's produced by Gregg Araki and Seth Kaplan. The production company is Black Bear Pictures, and the cinematographer is Tucker Corte. And the casting is done by Arlie Day and Mike Page. Starring Olivia Wilde as Erica, Cooper Hoffman as Elliot, Mason Gooding as Zap, Chase Sue Wonders as Apple, Daveed Diggs as Victor, Charlie XCX as Minerva, and Johnny Knoxville and Margaret Cho make cameos as the police officers in the film as well. I Want Your Sex is a film that I found to be quite out of touch. When I first heard about this film, it was during Sundance Festival 2026 a few months ago, which I attended from my couch. And there were a lot of rumblings about this film being predicated on the depiction of Gen Z sexual patterns. And based on interviews and pre-embargo reviews, I had got a vibe from it that I kind of just wanted to stay away until I actually saw the film itself, because when it comes to people trying to depict Gen Z and our sexual patterns, I just don't think most people get it right. I don't think most people are actually in tune with Gen Z or what we actually do in regards to sex. And so I saw it as like kind of like a little red flag in regards to it and was like, I'm just gonna wait to hold my opinions or hold anybody else's opinions from getting into my brain until I see it for myself. And that I did. The film follows the character of Elliot, played by Cooper Hoffman, who is a struggling / lost man in his 20s looking for some sort of sense of security, as most 20-year-olds do, and snags a job working under a seemingly renowned artist, Erica Tracy, played by Olivia Wilde, who takes more interest in Elliot as a promising sexual partner rather than just an artistic assistant. Then we walk through a few chaotic cycles with them surrounding their inappropriate boss-employee relationship and all the friends we meet along the way. When it comes to my main takeaways from this film, I struggle to find something concrete to say. I don't believe I left this film with anything, whether that be like good or bad, which is bad in my eyes. The characters in this film aren't unique in my eyes. I didn't find Elliot to be compelling. I didn't find Erica to be intriguing. I didn't find Zap to be realistic in the slightest. I think Apple was pure gimmick that failed. I'm very confused by Daveed Diggs as Victor here. Not that like I don't understand the character of Victor. It's like a stereotypical archetype for like the sidekick of like the woman of power, which is usually like a middle-aged queer man of some sort who's like, rude or sarcastic or distant, whatever. But more so like why Daveed Diggs is like taking this role. Also, if we pivot like 2 times to the right, you can see Daveed Diggs on The Boys on Amazon Prime, and his character there I'm also like big question marks about. Like, why would you take this role? Like, what are you doing here? Like, do we need extra checks? Like, I don't know. We're just doing a lot of gimmicky stuff, and it's just like, are you a gimmick artist? Maybe you are. Who knows? I don't know. But to me, it was just like, why? Charlie XCX is also here for no reason whatsoever, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a hater of Charlie XCX. I know a lot of people are very annoyed by Charlie XCX's recent pivot into the film industry post her Brat era, but I'm not really offended by that. I don't think Charlie XCX has done anything offensive yet, in my opinion, when it comes to her film endeavors. I thought that she was fine in the moment. I thought the moment was fine. I think the moment is just ill written. I think it's not a full picture, but I think Charlie XCX in that film is totally fine. I also think Charlie XCX's involvement in Wuthering Heights when it came to the music and promotion aspect of that film was totally fine as well. I know she has a film out right now called Erepka or Erepcha. I don't know how to pronounce it right now. I will learn how to pronounce it, but I do plan on seeing that this week because I do know that it's in theaters this week. I do want to see it because a lot of people are saying that what she's doing in there is interesting. So I do want to, see if she is building upon her talent in some way when it comes to film. But in this film, I just don't think she had a place here. She doesn't really have chemistry with Cooper Hoffman at all. I don't think the character of Minerva has chemistry with the character of Elliot in this film whatsoever. I also think the comedic pieces that Minerva was supposed to be utilized for did not hit at all. So it just fell flat for me when it came to her involvement in general. Which brings me over to the storylines of this film. I can't remember a full storyline in this film that actually made sense to me. And when I say that, I don't mean does it make sense that it's happening? It's just what is the purpose of all of this? No messaging really got across to me in this film. So all the storylines just felt like we're just shooting things on camera and putting them on screen to me, unfortunately. When it comes to the characters of Zap and Apple, it was very disappointing in regards to their characterizations, in my opinion, of queer people in this film. You have Mason Gooding here, who I think Mason Gooding Jr. is a good actor, in my opinion. I am interested and intrigued by him. But however, when you're coming off the heels of Dylan O'Brien in Twinless from last year, playing a gay man accurately and elegantly, in my opinion, you have to do a performance of that stature to get an applause from me, and Mason Gooding is just not doing that in this film. I don't believe he's queer. I don't believe his character is real. I don't think anything that he said in this film is of value, and so that was very disappointing. You also have Chase Sue Wonders here as Apple, who is lesbian in this film, but not lesbian in this film. I don't really know where we left off with that. I know that she's not really in the second half of this film at all after the whole threesome scene, which also threw me because she's jealous of Elliot and Erica because Elliot's being with Erica, but I'm oh, so she's into Elliot, but it's that never occurred in the first half of the film because they were roommates, and so now she's interested in Elliot and she's not a lesbian. Was that supposed to be a gag? I'm confused. Did I miss something? Maybe I missed something because I was just tapped out maybe by the time we got to an hour. But yeah, nothing about the character of Apple really made sense to me. I'm also just Chase Sue Wonders has played a lesbian before in Generation, and very well. She played a lesbian very well and very believable, so I know that she can do it. So I'm is the script really holding her back that much? It is. And also Chase Sue Wonders is on the studio, and I don't like the studio. I don't think Chase Sue Wonders is doing horribly on the studio, but I just think girl, what are we doing in general, right? And then the Elliot and Erica relationship culminating into this we understand each other no one else can, and we have this forbidden love due to our dynamic, but we still understand each other and have love for each other in heart, and we're cool. It just that whole dynamic and storyline just didn't pay off for me at all whatsoever, because I just don't believe in these characters in any sense. So that was a big downside to this film as well. I also found the sex in this film just to be unrealistic in totality. The sex in this film, straight men do not just do butt play. Straight men just don't do butt play. Full on butt play, dildo in the booty hole, without prepping. And straight men don't prep, especially not the character of Cooper Hoffman in this film, who's never done anything like that. So that was just unrealistic as hell for me. And I've always been purported to that, I've always been told, I should say, that Gregg Araki is this great director in regards to how he goes about sex and eroticism. And so seeing this, I was just this is very tacky and corny. And then also it's unappealing. If you're gonna have Cooper Hoffman here naked, if you're gonna have his butt showing, can you at least make him sexy? Do we have a vision for his physique for this film? There's a way that you can make Cooper Hoffman sexy in this film. He's not really sexy in this film in the slightest. Even if that wasn't the point, that's still a downturn in my opinion. If your main character is just unappealing in all ways when it comes to the sex of this film, and sex is in the title, isn't that a failure of the film? It's also not even like funny. Like the sex scenes aren't funny. I know they're trying to be funny, but they're not funny at all. Which like brings us to like the comedy of the film, which I think like didn't hit at all. I don't really think there's any like really true comedy in this film, in my opinion. When I was seated in the theater, there was just like woman and her partner, her man, I guess. But the woman, like, she was laughing at every single quippy joke that was being thrown at the audience, like loudly. And in my opinion, that's just like the nail in the coffin. That the comedy of this film was very like cheap, in my opinion, because if people like that who go to films and laugh at every single joke that's like pushed towards them because they're just those type of people, they laugh at anything, then it means that like you were making a film for those type of people, and that's not the type of film I want to be in awe of. And then I can't even find any technical aspects about this film to like actually like. When it came to like the visual aspects of this film, I think all the lighting is like very dull. It's a lot of blue lights, a lot of white lights. It's giving very corporate culture, but in the worst way possible. Not corporate culture in like the industry on HBO way or the chair company on HBO way, but corporate culture in like the like, this is dull and boring and it kind of hurts my eyes way. Nothing's vibrant about this, and the way that the lights are structured in this film, outside of like the one like Galleria scene where obviously like you have a lot of greens and pinks and yellows everywhere, I didn't like what was going on. Even like when you have like this, like the set design in this film as well. Like when it comes to set designs, we're flipping back and forth from like sitcom-esque set design to like scripted television-esque set designs, and it didn't really flow well for me or mesh at all. And when you have like the scenes where Cooper is like in the bedroom with Minerva, or like he's in the kitchen with Apple, like those don't feel vibrant at all, or like very like unique in like a positive way, in my opinion. And neither do like the scripted type of style of film either, when we're at like the gallery and things like that. It all just feels very like cheap to me. And I know cheap is not like the best way to talk about a film, because like, I mean, it is a low budget film, so it's not like expensive, but like when I say cheap, it just doesn't feel like the proper vision was given to this film for it to be executed in a way that at least is pleasing towards me, or in a way that like I can say this is a good film, because I cannot confidently say this is a good film. Which brings me to like my overall like opinions or ratings on this film. I usually don't want to give like ratings on films, but like this one's bad. And so like, I mean, like, I'm not going to give it a 10. I'm not ever going to give this film 10s. I'm not going to give this film 8s. I'm not going to give this film 6s. Well, I'll give this film 4s. I can give this film a 4 out of 10, I guess. Like, I don't even know why I'd be giving it a 4 out of 10 for, but I guess, like, just to be nice. That's a 2 out of 5. Like, I can give it 2 out of 5, I guess, but I wouldn't mind giving it a 1 out of 5 or a 2 out of 10 either. Like, I don't see any harm done in that. I don't think anybody who's going... I know I saw this film earlier than most people are going to see this film, but I don't think anyone's going to see this film and look at whatever I'm saying about this film and be like, he's out of his mind. Like, this film is not anything to rave about, in my opinion. Now, with all of that being said, I did leave the theater very disappointed in regards to what I viewed, and I felt like I wasted my time a little bit, and like my expectations were not met. I was disappointed. However, I never let like my first encounter with a director be like my last encounter with a director, ever, honestly, whether they're like established or whether they're like new. I always give like second chances or third chances, because like, you know, sometimes you miss it. Sometimes you miss the marks, and not everybody has like a 10 out of 10 batting average, right? So I decided to go and do a deep dive in regards to Gregg Araki's filmography, because I was like, let me give him a second chance and see if the hype that everybody has given towards him is rightful. When starting this deep dive, I first went to Wikipedia, IMDb, Google to look at all the films that Gregg Araki has in his filmography. And I first wanted to find a film that I would know by name or by image to some degree. And the only film that I saw in this list that I knew by image was Mysterious Skin. So I just was like, let me go ahead and go with that. Also, like, it stars an actor who I like, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So I was like, let me just go ahead and start with that and see what we get with it. And that's what I did. I rented it on YouTube for like $2. I have $2 to spare. Like, you know, I wanted to find it for free, but I couldn't find it for free. And I pressed play. So, Mysterious Skin is directed by Gregg Araki. It's written by Gregg Araki and Scott Heim, because I think it's adapted from Scott Heim's novel, based on the interviews with Joseph Gordon-Levitt that I was listening to after I watched the film. It stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Neil, Brady Corbet as Brian, Michelle Trachtenberg as Wendy, Jeffrey Lycan as Eric, Elizabeth Shue as Miss McCormick, and Bill Sage as the coach. So I found this film to be exceptionally great. This film caught me off guard a little bit, not simply for the fact that I had just saw I Want Your Sex and I thought that it was going to be a bad experience because my first experience with Gregg Araki was bad, but more so because it dives into a conversation that's very unique in my opinion. I don't think I've seen storytelling take on the psychological aspects of like pedophilia and like complex adult child relationships as confrontationally as this film since maybe like Eve's Bayou. I want to say that Call Me By Your Name is kind of one too, but Call Me By Your Name doesn't really have like a massive age gap as these films do, and also like it doesn't really confront that type of like aspect of the story that's occurring there. It's a more like romanticism like film than like really like a film about like trauma and like, you know, inappropriate nature, I guess. The film follows two boys who experience sexual assault over the course of a year from their little league baseball coach and how they've gone about their life in the aftermath of such over the decade span from when they were 9 to 19 years old. So we could just go ahead and start with the character of Neil, who is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this film. And Neil is very accepting of the assault that is done to him by their coach. And he's so deep on the inside of his trauma that he doesn't even see his trauma as trauma anymore. He sees it as like nomenclature. And he feigns to feel as important and special as his coach made him feel while the assault was occurring over that year span. And the trauma has like warped his perspective of all like the heinous occurrences that he involves himself with throughout his life, where we have like he assaults another kid when he assaults multiple kids when he is young after he has been assaulted by his coach because he sees it as like normal now, but also like he is opening himself up to way more predatory dynamics in his like teenage life and his adult life at an excessive rate, I might say, to feel like to feel the same feelings that he felt from how his coach would make him feel while all the assault was going on. And then we also have the lifestyle of Brian playing out at the same time, where Brian, played by Brady Corbet, is like totally oblivious to the assault that he faced from their coach. And he's like so far on the outside of his trauma that he doesn't even see his trauma as like trauma. He sees it as like extraterrestrial. He sees it as something that's like non-human. Like he doesn't really understand what occurred to him. So it's like, it seems like it's not even like of what a normal lifestyle would be because it shouldn't be, and it's not. And he's feeling just like Neil, but not like Neil, to like uncover why such a monumental moment in his life is so unknown to him, like why that's a blank spot in his head, because he is trying to, you know, uncover these like hidden locked up feelings that he has of confusion. And it warps his perspective of all the ways in which like harm sees itself within society, in my opinion, through the unknown, i.e. like people who are looking for aliens or like for Bigfoot and things like that. And so then he like runs into conspiracy theorists, right? And those conspiracy theorists are also people who are trying to use these ideas of the unknown and things to, you know, manipulate people into being vulnerable in certain ways. And so then they can take advantage of him, as the woman does, who he, you know, falls into some type of dynamic with, where like really she's not even believing that she's abducted herself. She's just looking for somebody to like, you know, obsess over something with, and like, you know, I guess like connect with someone. And she ends up like trying to sexually assault Brian as well. And then Brian realizes like, whoa, like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I thought we were really talking about alien abduction, but then it kind of clicks in his head. Then like, we're not really talking about it, or at least she's not really talking about alien abduction. And like, I shouldn't be looking for answers to what I'm confused about from like people who I don't even know, which leads both of them to finally like meet and reconcile and face their trauma together head on, which makes them like go visit their coach's house where he used to live, I would say, when they still were kids on the Little League. And they have to like deal with their trauma in like a very blunt fashion, like probably like the most blunt fashion possible you could ever deal with your sexual trauma, in my opinion. And the dynamics that are playing out between these two are just like indirectly playing out, because they don't meet each other until literally like the last like 20 minutes of the film. So then like the dynamics that are playing out between them are so interesting to me, because they're so different, but they're yet like so similar at the same time. You have Neil here, who's like more rugged and like nonchalant, where like Brian is more structured and like intentional with his life. And like Neil doesn't care about like academics at all, from what we see. But then like Brian is like infatuated with science. But like both of those dynamics are like stemmed from the same place, their trauma. And then you have like both of them are like gay and like, or into men, I should say, because we don't really know about Brian, but like it's like that sparks a deeper conversation where like, you know, a lot of people conflate like, you know, homosexuality with pedophilia. Like if you're gay, that means you were touched. But it's like, I think the film like wants you to ask yourself that, like, is this true? Because like obviously you have someone like Neil who's like very overt with his sexuality. He's very out there, and it's like makes you question like, oh, is he like that? Because he is like that because he's very overt with his sexuality because he was traumatized in that way, and he's trying to regain his power through like owning it in a sense, in my opinion. However, when you have Brian, who's like not sexual at all, and then when he actually genuinely tries to create such like connections with people romantically, it doesn't really work out on the girl side. But then when you have a character like Eric, who both of them are like, you know, kind of intertwined with to a certain degree, where like Eric is more interested in Neil than Neil is interested in Eric, but that's because Neil is chasing something where like Eric is chasing him, like Neil isn't looking for a partner. But then you have Brian, who's like, Eric isn't really chasing, but is finding him, and they actually develop a bond. And like, I'm really sad that like in that film, we really didn't get to see like anything like really like become concrete between like Eric and Brian, because like that car scene, like they almost did something, but then obviously like Brian's dad is like outside of the car, so like it turns into something else and more like deeper and depressing in my opinion, but still beautiful, because I think the storytelling here is like it's so multi-layered in my opinion, which I think this film is great in regard to. And speaking of Brian's father, we just have absent fathers in this film regardless. So like Neil's father is like absent completely, and then Brian's father is absent completely. And then they both have like present mothers who they love dearly, and they also have sisters where like Brian has an actual sister who he has a good standing with, but also like Neil has a sister in what's her name? Michelle Trachtenberg's character, Wendy, in Wendy. And so they're like kind of mirrors of each other. They're like two sides of the way in which like your trauma can manifest, in my opinion. And that's what Gregg Araki was trying to get across with this film. And I think it was brilliant, honestly. I think this film also asks us if like Neil's a bad person. Like, is Neil like, he obviously is a victim. He definitely is a victim. But also like, is he a bad person? Like, how do we feel about this? Because like hurt people, right? And he's been hurt, and he hurt people. And so the question is like, and you have the character of Wendy who says like to Eric, like, he has a lot of trauma and you don't even know the half of it, and he's done things to people that I can't ever even like say in confidence, but like just letting you know, like if you're going to be alone with him, like this could happen to you. She kind of was warning him of that. And it's like, if we want to ask that question to ourselves, we kind of have to ask ourselves like, what do we think about Wendy? Because Wendy knows everything that we know as the audience. She does. And so how do we feel about Wendy? Because Wendy would be us. And when I ask myself, how do I feel about Wendy? I don't know. I feel like Wendy's rightful. Like, I feel like you don't give up on your friend, especially when you know your friend has faced something like very dark. But also at the same time, like, she did just allow some things to happen, but she was a kid at the same time. It's very convoluted. Like, this whole film is very convoluted, and that's what I love about it. It makes you, it's a discussion starter. I feel like if this film came out today, there would be so much conversation in regards to this film. I kind of wish it came out today, because then, like, we would have something to really talk about, like some meat, something with meat on the bones. Like, I wish this came out instead of I Want Your Sex, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. What are some other things about this film I want to talk about? I mean, I think there's only like two things that like really like irked me about this film. I think the only two things I could say about this film, not irked me. The first thing is that peanut butter peach pie, like Brian's mom was like, I made peanut butter peach pie. That sounds crazy. Like, what are they eating in Kansas? And second, the blue eye contacts, like, what's up with the blue eye contacts, Gregg Araki? Like, why did you just pick a kid who had like brown eyes like Joseph Gordon-Levitt? That did not make sense to me, because one scene is fully falling out of his eye. Like, overall, I love this film. I thought this film was great. This was like miles better than I Want Your Sex, and it immediately restored my faith in Gregg Araki and what I was about to get myself into, because I just kept on moving through. I was like, when it comes to a deep dive, you just got to keep on moving through, and that's what I did here. So the next film in Gregg Araki's filmography that I pressed play on was Splendor. Splendor is directed by Gregg Araki. It is written by Gregg Araki and Jill Kargerman. It stars Kathleen Robertson as Veronica, Jonathan Shaich as Abel, Matt Kiesler as Zed, Kelly MacDonald as Mike, and Eric Mabius as Ernest. This film simply follows a throuple that is created from a woman being unable to choose between her two lovers and deciding the best outcome would be for all three of them to just join in union. Then we run through her apprehensions to actually committing to the throuple for the foreseeable future when she ends up getting pregnant. I don't have a lot to say about this film. I did enjoy myself with this film. I think there's only like a few things that are my big takeaways in regards to this film. Kathleen Robertson in particular. So obviously I haven't seen a Gregg Araki film before, like 2 weeks ago. So I didn't know Kathleen Robertson was in this film, but also I'd never seen Kathleen Robertson in anything except Scary Movie 2. That's where I know Kathleen Robertson from, in Scary Movie 2 when she played Theo. And so seeing her here again was like, oh, she was actually doing other things at the time. Like I didn't know that she was like in film at the time, but she was in film in the 90s. So like now her being in Scary Movie 2 even makes more sense in my opinion, because I think a lot of people, like if you're my age, and you didn't like grow up watching all 90s film, like, you know, like not like all the popular 90s film, but like just like regular like film, like indie films in the 90s, then like when you saw Scary Movie 2, you saw that they like, you know, had recasted the character from like Buffy like to Theo. And so you're kind of like, oh, who's this random person? Like, who's this random redhead chick? But now I know she wasn't really that random. Maybe it's like the adults at the time, they're like, oh, that's Kathleen Robertson. But to us at the time, we're like, who's this random chick? But she was still funny in the film. So it was just nice seeing her in this film and knowing that like I'm connecting the dots between her career along the way. This film also taught me that like Gregg Araki is like really into sex. Like he's really into sex, which people always said, but like, this one was like, oh, we're proving that like, he's really into sex. Even though I know Mysterious Skin, there's a lot of sex in that too, so I already proved it. But then like that film was like, you know, the sex was a tool in that film. So I didn't want to just be like, oh, this is like Gregg Araki. I didn't want to just fully give it over to him, even though it was successful, all the sex that's in that film. But even though the sex that's in this film isn't like sexy, that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like kind of dark in a sense. And so this film, a lot of the sex scenes are sexy. There are attractive. I mean, not tragic, attractive, and they're like romantic. So then I'm like, oh, he just like knows how to do sex, or he likes to do sex a lot. So like that's where like the Gregg Araki is like a sex scene eroticism auteur film creator. Wheels started spinning in my head. So yes, I enjoyed my time with Splendor. As all of you know, I love romantic dramas, and this is a romantic drama. It kind of tutors on rom-com, but not really a rom-com. It's really like a romantic drama, and I had a great time with it, and I just kept on moving through the deep dive. So the next film that I had went ahead and pressed play on was The Doom Generation. So The Doom Generation is also written and directed by Gregg Araki himself, stars James Duval, who plays Jordan White in this film, Rose McGowan, who plays Amy Blue in this film, and Jonathan Chase, again, who plays Xavier Red in this film. So what are my main takeaways from The Doom Generation? Well, I did realize that like Gregg Araki is really into like MMF like dynamics. Like he loves a man-woman dynamic, like two men on one woman, or like a man and a woman on a man dynamic. So I think I know like what he was typing into like his web browser when he's a teenager and a young adult. I also like, you know, solidified in my head that like Jonathan Chase was like very hot in the 90s. He's hot in Splendor, but he's also older in Splendor and he doesn't have hair. So I didn't really notice that was him. And so when I'm watching The Doom Generation, I'm like, who is this actor? And I'm like, oh, this guy is the guy's playing Xavier. I'm like, he's really hot. And I looked at the cast, I'm like, whoa, that's Jonathan. I'm like, oh, and they're only like 4 years apart, but he looks drastically like different in my opinion. So it's just like, oh, he was like heartthrob kind of in the 90s. Understandable. I also think this film is very unique in the sense that it taps into like this Armageddon-esque aura of like the early 1990s in Southern California, or California in general, I should say. Especially like as a queer person during that time, and just like living on the outskirts of society to a sense, because like obviously it's not like today where like, you know, queer people were accepted to like in mass media as they are today. And it also like captures this like essence of that time where like nihilism reigned supreme, and like holding on to your freedom was like very like pertinent and important to a lot of people who just weren't on the insides of society, or like seen as conventional in a sense, I believe. And they also like, you know, we're living in like a more chaotic time. Like it's just like, I don't know, Gregg Araki, he's depicting these times as like very out of the norm and chaotic in a lot of ways, more than less, I should say. And this film is like an example of that, where all this random stuff is happening. Obviously, like this film is like an exaggeration of certain things. I don't believe people were going around and just like, you know, heads getting chopped off and shot off, and, you know, I mean, people were definitely being attacked by hate crime, like supremacist groups. That definitely was occurring. But, you know, and I mean, women were definitely being chased by men who were obsessed with them as well. So maybe he's not exaggerating. Maybe he is being very accurate. But I think whether he's exaggerating or he's being accurate, it doesn't matter because the film was very intriguing to me and I enjoyed my time a lot. So after watching The Doom Generation, I did go and try to look up some interviews and like look at some reviews. And then like the first review that I looked at was like, this is a part of a trilogy. So I just like stopped looking at and trying to look at interviews and reviews. And I was like, oh, this is a trilogy. Let me go ahead and like watch the other two films that are part of this trilogy. So what is the next film that I watched a part of this trilogy? Well, I watched Totally Effed Up. So Totally Effed Up is directed and written by Gregg Araki himself again, and it stars James Duval again as Andy. It also stars Rocco Bellic as Tommy, Gilbert Luna as Steven, Lance May as Derek, Susan Beshid as Michelle, Janae Jill as Patricia, and Alan Boyce as Ian. What did I think of Totally Effed Up? So Totally Effed Up is the first film in this trilogy that Gregg Araki was making in regards to like whatever thematic trilogy he was doing with this. I haven't really delved that far into like what his purpose was with this trilogy, but it is the first installment in this trilogy for him, and it very much was an ensemble film more than any other films in my opinion that he has. I think Nowhere is an ensemble film as well, but I think Totally Effed Up is like the film that actually gives every single character their own like full individuality in a sense when it comes to one of his films. And it's so interesting. This film is so interesting because in terms of its like goal in depicting like the ever confusing and trying existence it was like to be like a gay youth in like the early 1990s, it was very successful. It was a lot it was dealing with, and it was very successful in all of it in my opinion. And it depicted like all the strife that was occurring for the characters in this film, i.e. like the cheating between each other and like shunning from their own families and all the hate crimes they faced and like the loneliness and the fears of like AIDS at the time and things like that, and how that affected like young people, because these people are like, I believe they're like 20 years old, like 21 maybe. They're not even maybe not even 21. They're honestly probably like 19. Like Derek in the film is still living with his mom, so I feel like they're all college age, right? And there's like a very documentary, storytelling format to this film, which I thought was great. This film is also just very I want to say like it's raw, but it's not raw. I would say like it's very like soft in a sense in regards to like Gregg Araki films. Like it has like a very softness to it that I think like other Gregg Araki films don't really have. Now, even though I do think Mysterious Skin has a softness to it, I think let me think. I think all Gregg Araki films have softness to them, but I think that this one, it just felt like he was being very gentle in regards to how he was going about the characters. Whereas in other films where it's soft, he's still very blunt and brutal in some ways. Like with Mysterious Skin, like it's soft in regards to the characters because it's very gentle with them, but at the same time, it's like what they're doing is very brutal and very like violent, and it's very aggressive in a lot of sense. And that's one thing. He does a lot of aggressive things in his films, and I feel like this one was just like more soft than others. Now, the ending of this film is sad. I am very disheartened when Andy does take his own life. It's just very sad because it's just like, dang, like queer kids couldn't catch a break back then. I think that's just like the point of the film, in my opinion, is that like it was just a lot to be who you were at that time. And I don't know if Gregg Araki, like I need to do more research in regards to like Gregg Araki's experience, because obviously like Gregg Araki was probably like a teenager in the 80s, so his experience wasn't too far off. But I don't know if Gregg Araki is queer himself. I don't know if Gregg Araki grew up in California. I don't really know his background, and I probably needed to do that before I came and did this video, and I'm going to do that after I finish recording this video. But I think like that would add more layers, but it feels like that was his purpose in making this film, and it was felt. Which brings us to the third film in this trilogy, which is Nowhere. And so Nowhere is directed and written by Gregg Araki himself as well, and it stars James Duval. Yet again, James Duval is the star of this trilogy. And Rachel True is playing Mel. You have Nathan Bexton, who's playing Montgomery, Chiara Mastriani, who's playing Chris, Kathleen Robertson again, who's playing Lucifer here, Jordan Ladd, who's playing Alyssa. You have Sarah Lazez, who's playing Egg, Ryan Philippi, who's playing Chad, and Heather Graham, who's playing Lilith. Now, this film was way more like leaning into like that Armageddon-esque idea, but like bringing it to like the suburbs in a sense. Like it wasn't like the Doom Generation where you're just out and about in like random middle of nowhere dealing with craziness. And it wasn't like Totally Effed Up, where you're kind of like in like this like secluded community of people. It was very like this is suburban like everyday life for a lot of people, and like the characters felt like more normal than the other characters did. Not saying that like the kids in Totally Effed Up aren't normal, but it felt like they're ostracized, where like the characters or young adults in Nowhere feel like they're just like everyday people, right? And so he's like fusing like all his ideas that he just built up over like Totally Effed Up and like Doom Generation, and like putting it into like this like very understood circumstance of life, right? Which kind of made me like a little like, you know, off put by the film. I think Nowhere is my least favorite film of the trilogy. I would say like Totally Effed Up is definitely my favorite film of the trilogy, and then Doom Generation is my second favorite, and then Nowhere is my third favorite. So like it goes in order, but like de-escalates in regards to like my intrigue. This film is definitely his most stylistic film in my opinion of the trilogy. And like Totally Effed Up, it was a very dark and shadowy film reflecting like the lifestyle of the youth that we were looking and like viewing at the time. Like they had to live in kind of like the shadows to a certain extent, and their life and perspective on life was very dark. And so like the way that the style of the film was shot in the documentary way, but also like everybody's in the shadows, every room is dim, their clothes are dark, and like the lights are always turned off, and like they're young, so it's like very odd for that to be occurring, right? That was reflective of like the stylistic choice was reflective of what the storytelling was. And the same that goes for the Doom Generation, where it was very like flashy and strobe lighty, and which was reflecting like the sporadic nature of the lifestyle of the characters in that film were living as well. And then you have here in Nowhere, where it's like very bright and visible, while also like being dark at the same time. But even when it's dark, it's very bright and visible. Nothing's like actually dark. So like everything's occurring in like the light in a certain sense in this film, which reflects like the blunt yet like ignored nature of the lifestyle that the characters in this film are living. Because I think everyone in this film, they're living out in the open and everybody knows that they exist and all of this stuff. Yet like none of their experiences are actually understood by anyone or known by anyone. And so I think there's like some more layers in regards to that messaging that I haven't really dived into as much yet, because I literally just watched it last night. But it will click for me, I'm pretty sure, soon. And so I think like the stylistic choice in this film was like, you know, very overt, but it was also very understood. Now you may ask, why is this like your least favorite film of his in this trilogy? And I think there's just a lot going on in this film, and it wasn't enough. It was a lot going on, but there wasn't enough in the film for me to feel like I had my hands around everything that's going on here. Like you have all these romantic dynamics that are happening. Like you have tons of romantic dynamics that are happening that didn't even get to get fleshed out fully, because like we have so much going on. And then you also have like the Armageddon-esque moments here that like, you know, like reflect back on the Doom Generation that kind of threw me for a loop in a lot of sense. Like that whole thing where like Mel's little brother, like the people from the desert come and take the car and go to the party, like that threw me for a loop. Honestly, I know I'm missing something. Somebody out there is like, oh, this is what it means. I'm sorry. I'm going to look into it. But right now I'm just like, what's going on? And then you have like all the aggressive like sex scenes. Like there's a lot of aggressive sex scenes, and also like a very violent sexual assault scene in this film as well. And then you have all like the Christian propaganda that's going on here, which also like made me think of like Eddington by Ari Aster, because it's like very like Eddington is very this, I would say. I was about to say like this is very Eddington-esque, but it's really like Eddington is very this-esque. So that was interesting to see. You have Egg taking her own life here. Now, in Totally Effed Up, you have Andy takes his own life. And in Doom Generation, I don't think anyone takes their own life in there. But then, like, I don't know. There's this thing with taking your own life that Gregg Araki is very interested in. There's a lot of, you know, writing surrounding that. A lot of people being like, you know, life is over, and like, you know, I don't like life. A lot of like suicidal ideations occur in Gregg Araki films, and so that's very interesting of a takeaway from this film as well. But also like it's just so much going on there. Like there's so much to think about already. And then like you also have like the whole like lizard people aspect to this film as well. And it's like that's a lot for me to wrap my head around. And then you have like the alien-esque finale where Montgomery like combusts and like reveals that he's like a beetle person now. In a sense, it felt very like, you know, season 3 of like Jujutsu Kaisen, I mean. If you watch anime, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Yuta versus like Kuroroshi like fight, like where it's like, yeah, it was just a lot for me. Like it was a lot for me. And that's why I just have it at the bottom of the three. Like, I could rewatch it, but I don't think I want to rewatch it, honestly, because I think I like the other two so much more, and I don't think that's going to change. So, after finishing the trilogy, I'm like, what am I going to watch next? And so, we only have like 4 other films left to watch, and I'm like, Like, I really liked Totally Effed Up. I liked The Doom Generation. I loved Mysterious Skin, but then I didn't really like Nowhere. I wasn't really that enthralled with Nowhere. I liked Splendor as well, but like not a lot. But I wasn't that enthralled with Nowhere, and I just watched Nowhere. So then I'm like, what am I gonna watch next? I guess something's gonna have to be bad, because there's no way that he made I Want Your Sex, and I Want Your Sex is like miles away bad from like his worst film, right? And so then I'm like, oh, look who I see. I see Anna Faris. And so I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to go ahead and press play on Smiley Face. So Smiley Face is directed by Gregg Araki, but it is his only film, I believe, that he did not write. It's written by Dylan Haggerty, and that's probably why the film is what it is. This film stars Anna Faris, who plays Jane, John Krasinski, who plays Brevin, and Adam Brody, who plays Steve the Diller. This film basically is like it's just a weed film. Like I don't even have a way to describe it outside of just being like a pothead film, like a stoner film. If you know what those are, you know what those are. It came out during like the prime like stoner film era, in my opinion, during this century at least, which was like late 2010s, but like not 2010, but like that 2006 to 2009 era, where like you have like this film coming out. You have like Grandma's Boy, if you've seen Grandma's Boy. You have Pineapple Express. You have Harold and Kumar films. All of those types of films, right? Where like the audience for are people who like are usually intoxicated when they watch films, and that's what this film was giving. I don't really have a lot of takeaways from this film. I didn't like this film because I don't think this film is to be liked. Obviously, it's made I don't even know really like the purpose in this film. I know the purpose in this film, but I don't really think there was like a higher purpose in this film outside of just being like another like stoner film. I do think like Anna Faris and John Krasinski are doing fine in this film. I think the funniest thing about the film, because like this film's supposed to be funny, like because that's what stoner films are supposed to be. They're supposed to be funny. Like I remember watching stoner films when I was in like elementary school. And I was in like 5th grade and like laughing. Like you're supposed to laugh. Like Grandma's Boy, I was dying laughing at. Harold and Kumar, I was laughing at. Pineapple Express, I was laughing at. All those films like you're supposed to laugh at. This one I wasn't really laughing at, and I'm an adult now. The only part that I did really laugh at really, really hard was when Anna Faris was in the bathroom and the lady was trying to come in and she's like, I'm shitting right now. I'm literally shitting so hard right now. Oh my gosh. And the lady's like listening, like I'm laughing again because it was so like Scary Movie 1-esque Anna Faris gaggy. Like it was very like referencing her own self in like a previous project. And I love that because like I love scary movies. So like, obviously, that's why I like that part of it. There also were like a lot of cameos in this film. So you have like Jane Lynch here, who's being the casting director, who's funny in this film as well. You have Jayma Mays, who's also from, she's from Glee, but she's also here. She's being funny. She's in like the audition room. And then you have Matthew J. Evans, who like I don't care for, but like it was very interesting seeing him because if you watch Nickelodeon when you were younger, I think it was iCarly or Victorious, but he was like on there as like a crying kid. No, it was Drake and Josh. I think it was Drake and Josh. Matthew J. Evans, like when he was a kid, he was on Drake and Josh as like the crying, whiny, naggy kid, and like he's also the crying, whiny, naggy kid in this film as well. So I'm like, was he just getting his like checks for like crying and like squinting his eyes the whole like early 2010s, mid 2010s? I mean, if so, good for him, but also it's like, I don't care for it. So that's my thoughts on Smiley Face, and we can just go ahead and move on to the next film. So after Smiley Face, I was like, I don't know if I could watch another bad Gregg Araki film. And so I saw like there was Kaboom, and I was like looking at the cast list and the description. I was like, I don't think I can tap into that. But then I was like, this film right here, The Living End, looks intriguing. And I pressed play. The Living End was the final film of my Gregg Araki deep dive that I went into. I'm not going to watch Kaboom. I'm not going to watch like the 2 other films that he has. I'm just going to leave it at The Living End because The Living End was spectacular, y'all. Like, The Living End was amazing. The Living End is directed and written by Gregg Araki himself. It is his 2nd film, I believe. It stars Micah Dietrich as Luke, Craig Gilmore as John, and Darcy Marta as Darcy in this film. So what are my takeaways from this film? Obviously, like I just told you, like I think this film is spectacular. This is my favorite Gregg Araki film. I love good gay food, and this is good gay food. I think like Gregg Araki has always been interested in the idea of like AIDS and how that affected queer people at the time. Obviously, that's what the premise, the sub premise, I would say, of like Mysterious Skin, the sub premise of like Totally Effed Up, the sub premise of like Doom Generation, the sub premise of like every single film set in the 90s that like Gregg Araki has created, right? Or just like in the early 2000s as well. Outside of Splendor, I don't think Splendor like dives into that storytelling. However, like The Living End like takes that idea that he really focuses on, and even though like this he did this before all those other films, so maybe like this is his initial like premise of interest, but he takes like the AIDS premise and like he like just hones in on that. He kind of does away with like the very Armageddon-esque style that he like kind of leans into, and he doesn't really get too dark with this film either, in my opinion, even though there is like, you know, murdering, but like you don't really see it in this film. There's gunshots in this film, but you don't see it in this film. The blood splatter you do see from this film are not things that are like it's not gory. It's less gory and less like grotesque and less like horrific than any of his other films, in my opinion, outside of like Totally Effed Up, or like Mysterious Skin. It's not horrific either. So as I already said, The Living End is my favorite Gregg Araki film. I found this film to be spectacular. It pulled on my heartstrings the most out of all Gregg Araki films. I think the only one that kind of comes closer, like would tie with this, is Mysterious Skin. Both of these films left me kind of shattered emotionally for like, you know, the hour gap that I had before I went on to the next film. But like I didn't watch another film after The Living End, so Living End still rings true in my heart right now, and like my heart is still trying to repair itself from, you know, just like the depressive nature that comes with such a story that we're seeing here. What story am I talking about? Well, basically in this film, you have our two lead characters, John and Luke, who are both lost in a sense. And John just got diagnosed with HIV and AIDS, and then he, you know, intertwines himself with Luke, I will say, just not to spoil the whole thing or get too deep into it. And they go on this like, you know, very impromptu excursion together across the West Coast, trying to figure like out what they want out of life, in my opinion, but also like what they can have in life, because when you are a young person and you're diagnosed with HIV and AIDS in the early 90s, like you believe you're going to die soon. Most people did die very quickly, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think medication that is prevalent today was present like during the early 90s, but I could be mistaken. And they basically are like just both lost, and they're looking for love in very different ways, right? You have Luke, who's like a criminal, and he is very erratic and he does very stupid things, but he's also lost. And you have John, who is not erratic, but he's very structured and he's very put together and he has life together and he has money, but he's also lost. And they're both yearning for love. And now that like they're diagnosed with AIDS, well, I mean, not they. John's diagnosed with AIDS. He feels like he's never gonna get love again. That's how the film starts off, and he feels like he's done with life. Life is over for him. And then he runs into Luke, who kind of like just brings his life, like recharges his life, like puts so much new energy and craziness in his life that he thought he was never gonna be able to experience again. And I think for Luke, John brings structure, but also like shows him that like life is worth living, because Luke is so like, he's so ready to go. He's so over life. That's why he's being so erratic. That's why he's doing all these crimes. That's why he's murdered people before and things like that. And we just see like how like they're so soft for each other. And I think in this film, there's so many moments where it's just like, you can tell that they want to say I love you, or they are saying I love you without saying I love you. They're like, you're so crazy, or like, I don't understand you, or things like that. But you can just tell like they're really infatuated with each other. And I really value that. I also think that this is probably like the best shot film by Gregg Araki, in my opinion. There's so many like screen caps from this film that I took like screenshots, because obviously I was watching it from like from an illegal website. So like I was just screenshotting the hell out of all like the films that not films, all the scenes that I loved. And like you have that one scene in like the third act where they're parked on the side of the road and John's sitting on the car, but Luke is peeing on the hillside, and like that whole scene is great. But then also I think everything in the third act is great. Like you have literally when they're on the beach, when like Luke takes John back to the beach, like he drove him all the way back. That's also interesting. They were in Wyoming and Luke drove him all the way back to like the ocean, which is very or like did they already like leave Wyoming and get closer? I don't think they left Wyoming and got closer. I think like he just tied him up and took him to the beach. But that whole scene where like, you know, he fails at like, you know, taking his own life, as he's told John he would, and then he unties John. John kind of leaves him and then comes back because he knows that like they're bonded. They're bonded for life at this point. And that scene where John comes back and sits next to Luke and they kind of like hug each other and the sunset is behind them on the beach, that scene was like so beautiful in my opinion, and I love that so much. And then we leave the film on that note. Like, it's just a perfect film in my opinion. It's not really like, there's no huge hardcore messaging in it, but it's just like, I think I'm a hopeless romantic, and I think like for hopeless romantics like me, like you yearn for like that like ultimate like tension when it comes to like romanticism, and this film like kind of gave it to me. So I'm very pleased with it, and I'm very pleased that like that's gonna be the film that I leave like Gregg Araki with. I'm not gonna watch any of his other films because I think like this is enough for me. I don't need to do like a full deep dive for Gregg Araki because I don't want to be disappointed anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like I started disappointed, and now I can like leave Gregg Araki with being like very thoroughly satisfied. And so since that concludes my deep dive, I say all of that to say is that I think obviously like The Living End and Mysterious Skin might be tied. I would kind of right now today I would put The Living End above Mysterious Skin, but I might tie them like come like next week. So I think The Living End and Mysterious Skin are tied as my favorite Gregg Araki films, but I do also think they are the best Gregg Araki films. And then everything else is like kind of like miles below to a certain extent. I think Totally Effed Up is not miles below, it's like one step below, and then everything else is like miles below them. So like my top three for Gregg Araki would be The Living End, Mysterious Skin, and Totally Effed Up. And then everything else can fall however you see fit. I don't really care about the rest of them. I think I Want Your Sex was a disappointment, but that's fine. I see why Gregg Araki has been given the grace he's been given and why people are excited for I Want Your Sex. If you haven't seen it yet and you're watching this video, I hope I didn't spoil it for you. If you're a person like me who doesn't get spoiled, then great. And now you know how I feel about it. Maybe you feel differently. If you go watch it in a few months when it releases over the summer, come back, leave a comment. I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong or not. If you've already seen it and you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments. But if you do agree with me, let me know in the comments as well. And I would just ask everyone, you know, like, comment, and subscribe. And as I always say, I'm just a wannabe cinephile, and these are my thoughts. See y'all in the next one.